we talked a lot about what the name of the farm was going to be, and we came up with a lot of different options.
Oh, and some were so colorful.
We were going to name it Bluetooth Farm, because your teeth get blue when you eat blueberries. But Dave will tell how we ended up with our present name.
I grew up in Pennsylvania, and my mom was loved family history, oral history. So she always talked about Squire Benson up in Heath, Mass. Squire and Hannah Benson, who had 18 children. Actually, she said Squire had 18 children, 5 wives, and when he died, the whole town cheered. She always told this after a drink or two, and it was always the same story, Well, finally, one of those big genealogy books came out, and my parents came up to visit, and I happened to live here in the area. That's fairly coincidental, but we finally found the cellar, the graveyard where they live, and then where they are buried, and then we finally located the old cellar hole. And anyway, according to history, his one wife was Hannah Benson, and they had 17 children, which is extremely impressive, and she outlived him. But they actually seemed like a great family, and in fact, surveys, until this recent one, the survey still said the Benson place on it all the way back, historically, but this one is so complex that they finally got rid of that. So when we were looking for a place to buy and to build, I knew about the historical part, and I came to show Ted the land, and I walked up to the owner of this house, and I just said, "Do you happen to have any land for sale?" And she said, "Well, I was thinking of selling a parcel." And it turns out the part she was thinking of selling is where the cellar hole is. So we bought that, and
Some of you may know June Day. She lives in Amherst now.
What's her last name?
June Guile.
Oh, Guile. Right.
Oh, I know her.
You know June?
Yeah.
Really wonderful.
She owned this before we did.
And farmed it, and she's been here, and she's contributed. It's just so nice to have her. I think excuse me, I'm emotional about this. We're realizing a few of her dreams as well.
That's great.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, so she sold us the lower piece, and then about 5 years later was ready to sell the farm, and we were logical people for her to approach as her neighbors. Her other neighbors, Henry and Joe Marlene, who have the beautiful house on the hill, Henry grew up coming to this land when his uncle and aunt farmed it. So he bought half of the farm from June. We bought the other half with this, and named it the Benson place after the ancestors. And it's really fun because I still have cousins here in Heath and in the area who come back, and they're excited about it. And, we're considering the first Benson family reunion since 1936 next year. So who knows? But it's definitely a piece of the puzzle for us, and we hope that it can be designated perhaps as a historical, site.
So are you related to the Bensons?
Yeah, I'm the great-great-great-grandson of Squire and Hannah.
Oh, so that's how your mother knew the story.
And it was only because she passed down the story orally.
I see.
We might never have found any of this out were it not for that. So it's really the power of family history at work. So that's the Benson piece, and I guess the last important one to mention, which is also very significant to us, is that the owner before this was a blueberry farm from up until 1957 was Robert Strong Woodward, who is a well-known regionally well-known landscape artist. And you'll see some of his work when you check in the barn later. And he had a studio here and painted a beech tree many times. These are some of his paintings, and had a very moving story of his own. He was paralyzed from the waist down for most of his life. Still painted very evocative landscapes. So he has a whole following of people who come here, some of whom still remember him, and and so we have so this trail is also going to give access to his traditional sites. So that's kind of neat as well.
As he died?
He died in 1957. So and then it was sold to the blueberry farmer that eventually went to us. So it's been blueberry farmed for about 50 years now. Yeah, burn 1 year, which was this spring. Then it grows and gets ready for productivity. The second year, it will have a nice crop of blueberries if other conditions go well, like frost and water. It'll have a nice crop in here. And then the third year, it will hopefully still have a harvestable crop. That depends. Some years yes, some years no. And then you'll burn again. And it's doable with the propane under normal conditions. And we don't use an extra fuel, just a fair bit of propane. And, you know, environmentally in the long haul, I don't know, mowing is an alternative if you can get it level enough. But the burning is okay.
But there's contamination with a torch?
A drip torch would be using kerosene, and that's a traditional tool, and our neighbor still uses it sometimes.
How did the Native Americans burn?
Well, probably they burnt like once every 6 years or 10 years or 15 years. So they burnt like that. They lit a match or whatever. They rubbed the sticks
fire.
and it took off. That would be I'm pretty sure of that. And that brings to a quick story, and then our guide should let us decide whether to move on. But so that first year when we burnt, as often happens with farm transition, things sort of, you know, decline a little bit, or management, you know, it's hard when you're getting ready to sell sometimes to manage everything. So the field, one of the fields up there was a little bit, you know, it'd been several years before it had been burnt.
This was our first spring on the land.
Yeah, so I asked my neighbor, Jack Cable, who was farming here 40 years. He's one of the two living legends of blueberry farming here in Heath. And he, you know, to help me burn. And so he came to the edge of the field. The wind was blowing from the northwest. He brought his drip torch, because that was, you know, I didn't know how to do this. Brought his drip torch, and I said, Jack, is there anything that I need to know before we burn? And he said, yeah, that you have house insurance. He lit the fire and tore across the field, the complete field. Ted is over in the pine trees with a broom.
I was between the fire and the house in the dry red pine forest.
Dry red pine.
The flame jumped the stone wall and was creeping through the pine needles.
And Ted swatting it.
I had a shovel, and I was shoveling snow into lines. There was still some snow in the woods to stop the flames from creeping too close to the house. And I couldn't yell because there was so much noise from the flames. They couldn't hear
They
me.
didn't even know, so that was bad. But that's what happens if you don't burn for a while. And in some ways, it would be nice to have a longer rotation, because you'd use less fuel and it would be much quicker and easier. But you'd have to have more land or a smaller crop or something. So